Hey, this is Jürgen Rasmussen. I want to share a very interesting false memory case with you guys, or I should say, alleged false memory case, and what I think we might be able to learn from it. I'm Jürgen Rasmussen, by the way. So, if you've been following my work and this particular channel, you know that I think that a lot can be learned by studying court cases. There's so much to be learned about group dynamics and biases, confirmation bias, suggestion, memory, so on and so forth. So here's the case. Back in September of last year, in my native Norway, a Norwegian Somali soccer player by the name of Ali Hamzi was out drunk in the streets with his L scooter, and he fell to the ground, had an accident, and when he woke up, he discovered that four of his teeth were broken, he had a broken nose, and he had a concussion. Now, he went to the hospital and he went to the police and he made the claim that he had been assaulted, and beaten up severely by six white guys after they had thrown racial slurs his way. Now, this became something of a huge scandal in the West Coast city Bergen here in Norway because the police relatively quickly stopped investigating because they couldn't find any leads whatsoever regarding these alleged six white attackers. But people and the media protested. You have thousands of people marching the streets, demanding that racism had no place in Norwegian society. People donated money. He received more than 270,000 Norwegian crowns, and the public was demanding that the police investigate this case. And they did. And what they were able to discover through various means was that the alleged racist attack, in fact, never occurred. They discovered that he was somewhere else in town than he had reported the attack to have happened. And footage showed that he quite simply, in a drunken manner, fell off his L scooter. Now, he got charged for making a false claim and went to court. And it seemed like a slam dunk that he would get convicted for this. But the defense brought in a psychologist by the name of Knut Dahlen, who talked about how this could be a case of false memory. And after his presentation, the prosecutor actually himself wanted the charges dropped. And that's how the whole thing ended up. Now, of course, a lot of people on the political left think this was a great move, essentially. A lot of people who lean in a different direction politically are somewhat outraged by this particular verdict. So let's have a look at it. Is it possible that this could be a false memory case? Because according to Norwegian law, you're supposed to only convict someone if you can exclude their explanation beyond any reasonable doubt. Now, of course, we all likely have false memories. When people talk about false memories, there are essentially two categories. So one category is that you kind of misremember things, that you add some details or you detract some details, but the memory has something to do with something that actually happened. And then you have the second category, which is, you fabricate something. You have a memory of something that had no basis in reality whatsoever. Like this particular case, where it was shown that he actually fell off his L scooter. The racially motivated attack never took place. So if he's not lying, it's a false memory. Now, clearly, the guy was not telling the truth. His explanation or his story is false. That in of itself does not prove that someone is lying, because for something to be a lie, you have to say something which isn't true, and you have to know that it's not true. So could it be a false memory? Well, consider this. First of all, we all likely have false memories, even though they may not be as dramatic. You have the very fact that he was drunk, and you have the accident with the concussion. You combine those two factors, or even if you took them in isolation, but when you combine them, this of course makes it very likely that information does not get passed from short-term to long-term memory. Essentially, the information is not stored in long-term memory to begin with. And here you have a chance that the mind will easily begin to fill in the blanks. Now he awoke with 4 broken teeth, a broken nose, and a concussion. His mind is going to try to make sense out of that. And what his mind is going to do is to try to answer a question a la, given the state that my body is in, and what I know about this particular situation, what likely happened? A very interesting example of just how easily we can get things wrong is given by the psychologist Lisa Feldman Barrett. In her book, 7.5 Lessons About the Brain, she shares this letter that she got with a soldier from South Africa who had been out hunting for guerrilla soldiers with his troop. And he had a high pulse, he had a weapon, he saw something at a distance, sharp object, AK-47, he saw a guerrilla leader and a bunch of soldiers behind him, and with a high pulse, he got ready to shoot. And then he felt a tap on his shoulder where his colleague said, "Don't shoot, it's just a boy." And then his mind cleared and he saw something new. He saw that the AK-47 was a herding stick. He saw that the guerrilla soldier was like a 12-year-old boy, and that the soldiers behind him were animals that he was taking care of. And he was so disturbed by this, and he wrote Lisa Feldman Barrett a letter asking, how could this happen? How could I turn a 12-year-old boy with a herding stick into a guerrilla soldier with an AK-47? And Lisa Feldman Barrett's answer, she's a researcher when it comes to emotion, is that the mind is a prediction organism. It's always trying to predict what's likely to happen next. And it's answering a question a la, given the state that my body is in, the high pulse and what I know about the situation, sharp objects, hunting for guerrilla soldiers, what am I likely to see next? And it's that guess of what am I likely to see next, that prediction that his mind created. And thankfully, in this context, he got some corrective feedback from the outside world. So going back to this particular Norwegian court case, the state that he was in with the broken nose and the teeth and the concussion, his mind is going to try to make sense of this. Now, let's say that and I have no idea what is the case with this guy, so I'm just speculating, but if he has been subject to racism in the past when he's been out and about on the town, if he has experienced violence or threats of violence, or let's say he hasn't experienced that, but let's say that he has a worldview, perhaps a kind of woke worldview where he filters everything through the lens of racism, for example. Or let's say that he has some dark personality tendencies, some Machiavellianism, some narcissism, some psychopathy. Let's say that he's looking for attention. Let's say that he's a racist himself and that he wants to harm white people, and he would like to, get economic compensation and get moral credibility by being a victim. Again, I can't claim to know that that's going on in his mind, but what I'm saying is, let's say that those mechanisms are at play, then the mind can easily construct something like that out of it and make it believable. So, so the decision is likely right in acquitting him, given the circumstances, you can't prove beyond a reasonable doubt that his explanation of false memories might not be the case. The psychologist, though, who is on the left solidly politically, I mean, most psychologists are, he made some claims in court which aren't quite accurate. He claimed that it's easy to discern a false memory from a lie. And he talked about how congruent the guy had seemed, coherent, and that if he had been lying, he would have been way more insistent that his explanation was true. 5 decades of research into lie detection shows clearly that how believable someone comes across with regards to their body language and verbal utterances and how they use language, and whether they're actually telling the truth or not, there's actually no correlation, right? So, but here's the tricky part. I fear simultaneously that this shows that we have our own version of Keir Starmer's anarcho lawfare two-tier system in the United Kingdom. I think you really have to be high up on the political left's, let's say, victim hierarchy to be acquitted in this way, to really experience that any reasonable doubt gets used to your advantage. I'm pretty sure that if this was a white, heterosexual, middle-aged guy who was in the same situation and made this sort of claim of racist, violent attack against black people, would he have gotten uh, would he have gotten acquitted in a Norwegian court of law? Would psychologists, I mean, they would testify, but would they give a good testimony like this? Probably not, or most likely not. It says something about just how high up this particular person was in the politically correct victim hierarchy. Our prime minister and one of the other main politicians in the Norwegian Labour Party just got caught lying red-handed. It's been something of a national scandal here in Norway when it comes to the budget. No left-leaning psychologist has come out of the woodworks and tried to defend the Labour Party Prime Minister and one of his right-hand men as not lying, but instead being the victims of their own mind-created false memories. Instead, many want to just excuse it as they quite simply made a mistake. So exciting times. We'll see what happens. It's very interesting to look at these false memory cases. And again, even though probably the guy is just lying through his teeth, we cannot in good conscience claim to know that for certain. There is this possibility that false memories are at play. But what I think made the case here is the drunkenness and the concussion. Because imagine if you're going to apply the law equally with this, anyone who cons people or makes false allegations then could get acquitted because you can't really rule out the possibility that they have a false memory. Imagine if you're a guy, some woman falsely accuses you of rape. The rape, in fact, never took place. You can even prove that no such event ever took place. It would be impossible to convict this person because you couldn't prove beyond any reasonable doubt that that person didn't believe her own false memory of being raped. And we have cases like that. So there has to be something else going on which makes the claim of false memory plausible, as in there are factors that kind of heighten the risk and makes it somewhat likely that false memories could be at play. I hope this was useful to you. As always, if you're looking to make some sort of change and you want to book some sessions with me, you're welcome to do that through provocativehypnosis.com. If you have any perspectives on false memories or court cases like this, I would be very interested to hear them. So please do share. All right. See you soon.